Hello.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Just for the listeners, today we have in the McCourt room a lady that I've met only via social media. Her name is Fay, and she has an Instagram page called Life with the Holmes, where she basically talks about her holistic motherhood and low tox living. And today I wanted to speak to her a bit more about that and how she became kind of like into the whole natural way of living and using natural products and eating well and organic food and stuff like that. So obviously we don't really know each other very well. This is probably the first time, well, it is the first time we've spoken on camera. So
hmm
I guess I'll just ask you a little bit about yourself, what you're doing at the minute, and we can kind of take it from there.
Yeah, so full-time mother, as we were just saying, it's hard work, but I love it. It's definitely what I've always wanted to do, I think. I didn't really have much interest in going back to work too soon or at all. Just really embraced it and it kind of just took over, I think. I don't know if you found that. It was, yeah, just unexpectedly, just something that I've always really loved. So yeah, I do that full time, and then I try and get on Instagram to share glimpses of my life now and then, and what we do, and what we're eating or what we're cooking and stuff like that. And yeah, it's busy. I'm sure any mother that's listening will know that it's hard to find much time for yourself.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's funny because we had our second in May, and me and my husband were just talking the other day about how it's like all of your time is now geared towards another human being, like a tiny little
Yeah,
person. And we've got tiny little people, and it's just like your time isn't your own anymore. And being a parent, it's the best thing in the world, but you do actually have to sacrifice like
yeah,
a lot, a lot.
you
And
do.
it's the best, but it is like a big sacrifice.
Yeah, you have to surrender to this new life, and I think some people really struggle with that. I think I did in the beginning, in the early days, and I was like, "What is this? You know, this new
Mm.
life?" And um, just small things, really. I think that you just no longer can do.
Yeah,
But then I think I don't know, it depends on the person, but I think the bigger picture of it all, and that you're with them all the time. Yeah, it's really worth it, isn't it? It's lovely.
totally. Yeah, I was saying as well because I used to love to go to the cinema, and I'd go, even just by myself, like one of those little week.
Yes, this is it. Yeah,
But you can't really do that, and, like, even just popping out to the shops, it's like, "Okay, well,
no,
we have to get this whole human being ready. We have to get your shoes on, your coat. We need to make sure
yeah.
you pack everything, pack your snacks, pack all your water, everything
Oh,
like
yeah,
that." It's like you can't just
yeah.
walk out the door anymore.
No, and then it's the toilet training that comes in with that, and it's, "Have you had a wee? Let's go for a wee," and then when you get there, "Let's go for a wee." That's what I'm in the middle of at the moment. Oh gosh, but, it's all good. It's all good
Yeah,
things.
they are the best, they are the best. So, did you kind of, like, get into the low tox living before you had your child, or was it, after you had your child, or how did you kind of break into
Well,
that?
if we're gonna go all the way back, I'd say it definitely started from, um well, I was working in London. I lived in London, so I met my husband, and, we both went to uni there, and, then we lived together there. We lived for 10 years there. It was a great life, but really intense. I worked as a beauty PR girl, so it was, taking journalists out,
Wow.
lots of lavish dinners and events, and I had to work events and like longer hours and stuff like that. So it was it was amazing, and it was intense, and I think that it just became a bit much. And I think when COVID hit, really started to evaluate our lives and what we wanted, and we left the city. um, I'd say countryside-ish. We're really near a town, because I think my husband can't quite let go there. He's like, "Oh, I need civilization. I need to see people. I need to see shops and stuff." So, yeah, so we still live kind of ish like that. So yeah, and then during that time, I think I was working at that time with two beauty clients, and I was freelance, so it was really, really great experience. But it was quite stressful, and I started to get gallbladder pain. Now, I don't know if you're ever familiar with the organ gallbladder, but it's right next to the liver. And I had no idea what was going on. I thought I was having a heart attack. It was so painful.
Oh my
It
gosh.
was like I woke up one day, and this is when we'd moved, and I think I was just finding the move stressful, and COVID itself was just,
Horrendous.
with with I think just relationships with people on different views and stuff. But I I woke up and I had such like a pain like all the way down my chest. I thought, what is going on? Went on for like a couple of days, and I said to my husband, I don't know what's going on. And at this point, I wouldn't say I was very holistic or non-toxic or anything like that. I was into herbs. I used to drink herbal tea, and I used to make my own blends, and I was very into alternative healing, but not as far as I am now. Um, and yeah, I remember saying, "What do I do?" to my husband. He was like, "You've just got to call the doctor." And at that point, I was quite reliant on doctors. I think I was very like, "You need to tell me what's wrong," because I just my mind wasn't open like that then.
Mm.
Um, anyway, I called them. They took my symptoms down, and they said, "Yeah, you're having a gallbladder attack, and it just means that your gallbladder is either inflamed or you've got lots of gallstones. We kind of need to do a ultrasound on your gallbladder to see what's going on." The earliest they could get me in was like 6 or 7 weeks, and I thought, "Oh my gosh, 6 or 7
Oh my
weeks of pain."
days.
Yeah, I tried doing yoga poses because it felt like it was, like, stuck, like, this pain. I was, like, moving around. Anyway, from that point of then to 6 weeks, I managed to shift the pain quite drastically, and
Wow.
I changed my diet. I read quite a lot of books. Obviously, we all had quite a lot of time at that point. I reduced my hours at work, um, or with my clients, and yeah, I just it was more that deep dive into eating food, like the nutrition wise, what I was
Mhm.
doing. Um, it went from one extreme to the other. I went vegan, which obviously, not I don't personally think that was the best idea for me at that point. But I think at that point, I feel like veganism was pictured as this like, if you really want to get better, you need to cut out everything in your life and juice and all of that, which
Mhm.
I think actually put quite a lot of strain on my body. I think that, veganism may work for people, especially, I have a friend who's really good at cooking everything from scratch, and I admire that about her, and she's got a real passion for it. And I think if it works for you, it works. But I think it didn't quite work with me because although there was a lot I was doing, and um, I changed a lot really, a lot of more exercise, and like I think it's a mental thing as well. A lot more breaks and meditation and stuff like that, and walks, and yeah. So that's kind of where it all began. And then I remember reading this book about it was actually a gallbladder book, and the causes of or the multiple causes of what it could be. And a lot of it was that it's toxins that accumulate in the liver and burden the liver, make it overwhelmed, and then it pours bile into the gallbladder and makes it like a very hard job for it to do. Makes it quite strenuous job for the gallbladder to filter out that bile. So I then started to think, what is it in my life that's so toxic that's doing all this? And from the list of things, it was basically like, what do you put on your body? What are you around? Like perfumes, fragrances,
Mhm.
chemicals in your home, like cleaning products, and even things like hand washes, body washes, because every like your skin is the largest organ, so everything is absorbing into your organs underneath. So it just felt very overwhelming for me. I was like, oh my gosh, I need to change everything. So that's where I kind of got into it, and then settled down a bit. I got pregnant, and then I think it probably dialed up a bit more because then, it's then starting to worry about your baby as well, is and
Yeah.
how healthy they're going to be, and I'd say a normal amount of worry, not like, overkill. I'd say most people have. And yeah, that was fine. I think I just made small changes along the way and eating well. I still don't feel like I had the eating well quite well then. I think I was still learning a lot, and I still ate quite a lot of processed foods that possibly
Mm,
deemed healthy and labeled as healthy, but I wasn't quite understanding what I see now in terms of ultra processed foods, like basically packaged stuff, and you look at it and it says about 1,000 ingredients in it. Like for example, one thing I actually really miss is tortilla wraps.
mm,
I used to love them. Was like a fajita wrap, and then
mm.
ever since I looked at the packet and I was like, that's not even really bread, is it, or wheat? It's like there's just so much stuff in it. So yeah, it was just stuff like that. I think I didn't know about that as much. I think one of the main triggers for me was that I had asthma, and I had
Mhm,
asthma since I was young, and I didn't want to take my inhalers when I was pregnant because I just worried about the intake of the steroids and things like that. Um, I didn't really know it was in an inhaler. Firstly, I was thought, well, what is this that I'm putting in every day? Like, is it
mm,
okay? Is it safe? Um, so I was just learning about how I can um, heal that, and I hadn't really got into homeopathy or homeopathy, however people say it. Hadn't really got into that until my son was born. And I think when my son was born, that's when everything kind of ramped up because he was born with eczema.
mhm,
And it was really sad to watch because he, would itch his face. It was very inflamed around his cheeks and his neck. Um, didn't actually know what it was at first. I thought, oh, he's just got rosy cheeks or he's got sore skin. Maybe it's the winter cold, or I couldn't really work out what it was. But yeah, and then I think just as time went on, just realised, I think I joined a Facebook group about children itchy skin, and then someone directed me to something else. And then, yeah, it was definitely eczema. And I tried lots of things. But when looking back, I think it was definitely that he had allergic reaction to something I was eating because I was breastfeeding.
Do you think that's what
Definitely
caused
think
the
so.
eczema?
I think it was a development of it. I'm not sure. It's hard, isn't it? Because allergies and eczema are very close
Yes.
together. But it almost felt like the flare up was when I ate certain things. Looking back, yeah.
Mm,
Yeah, and then it goes even deeper because then you think, well, why did he have allergies when he was just born? Why did he have or
mhm,
reactions to things? And then I started to look at it's the mother's gut microbiome that you pass on to your children. Yeah, so the state of your gut is and the goodness of it is what you pass on. So I personally think that perhaps I had not the best gut microbiome if I was already
mm,
struggling with gallbladder things and asthma. It wouldn't have been the strongest, I would say. So that would be why it was slightly impaired and perhaps open for reaction to allergy and eczema.
mm.
So I never took him to the doctors for it because personally I know what they're going to say. They're going to say, oh, let's get you a steroid cream.
Yep.
And then I'm very thankful for Facebook, really, because the women on there were very big on the steroid withdrawal syndrome, which is where you apply the steroid cream for a certain amount of time, and then eventually the body becomes reliant on it, and it just, once you take it away, it will just get worse and worse and worse.
Mhm,
So I definitely didn't go down that route, even though there was a lot of people that were just get the steroid cream and all of
mhm.
that. I wanted to get to the root cause and find out what was going on. He actually had surgery, my son, when he was 6 weeks old, which was very
Mm.
traumatic.
Oh my gosh.
He was born with a hernia, but it was in the groin area. Yeah, and yeah, it was really sad. Again, I think me being me and how alert I am with what caused that. I was very like, what's going on? And obviously the hospital just said, oh, it's nothing that you did. But then I think when I researched, there's there's lots of different things that it says, but I still don't really know what. I just think, yeah, I still don't really know, because even somebody was saying to me that it can also be like an emotional changes in your body, something that you went through in pregnancy. Some other people say it's exposure to toxins or exposure to what was it that they said? I can't remember what it was. Something toxic, like radiation or things, you
like
know.
ultrasoundy stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which really worries me. And I think, yeah, I did do an early scan, and then when I look back at the dates of when that area is formed, it is between, I think it's between 6 and 8 weeks or something around there, the male genital area. And that's when I had the early scan. And the thing is I had that scan because I had issues with my gallbladder at the time, and I needed to have that looked at, and I was pregnant at the same time. So that, you know, there's things there that I think, oh, but I didn't know, obviously, at the time. It's really hard, isn't it? Because you do punish yourself a lot, and
Yeah.
you're like, oh.
Yeah,
But
100%. And it's so difficult as well, because I think ultrasounds are treated as just, oh, it's just an ultrasound. And there's no kind of like, delve into what actually that does and that means. And even with me, my last baby, and I should know better than this because I've been trying to, I've been on this journey for quite a while, but I had about 5 or 6 ultrasounds because, they couldn't get him in the right position, or they couldn't do this, or they couldn't do that. And I didn't say no, and I could have said no. And like, even now I'm like, why did I do that? But you just,
exactly.
I mean, sometimes these things you just,
Well, it's similar to me, because he was measuring small, which is hilarious because he came out huge. He was 10 pounds 4.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was huge. And I remember they were saying, oh, he's measuring small and all this, and I was like, and this was kind of like week, it was quite late, it was quite late towards the end. And then it was almost like every day you need to come in and be measured, and that heartbeat thing. And I was like, oh, I don't want to, I'm fine. I feel the movements, I know that everything's fine. It was very pressured. And then sometimes I think, I should have just declined all of that. I didn't need all of that. And then the extra scans, every week, I didn't need to do that. So, yeah, I mean, this is it though with life, isn't it? You learn things and then you make changes next time.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he was born with that. And then, so he recovered amazingly, and I used homeopathy the moment it's through the after the surgery. Actually, leading up to it, I think I might have. I don't know if I did you anything actually. It was more after. I worked with a homeopath. I wouldn't have been able to do it myself. I'm not that clued up on it. I mean, I know now, but back then. So yeah, she gave me a protocol straight after the surgery, and that was mainly for pain, which was arnica, and hypercurum, which is for nerve damage, which would have been where they cut open, and calendula, which is just a natural healing remedy. So yeah, it was that, and then that for I don't know how long it was for, but he was amazing. Bounced back the next day, was just perfect, really.
Wow.
Yes. And then the eczema kind of carried on, really, and then that's when I worked with a homeopath to heal that, to get rid of that. But I would say mainly that was also it's hard to say, a homeopath and definitely diet.
Yeah.
And
And
when he started eating.
So with the eczema, I know you go into this on your Instagram, but for the people who haven't followed you yet on Instagram, who I'm sure will by the end of this podcast, how did you go about clearing up the eczema?
So well, firstly, I think it was my diet that was needing to be looked at, because he was so small, he wouldn't have been eating, and I was breastfeeding. And I know there's a lot of controversy about people that say, oh, well, you can eat anything and it doesn't pass to the baby. I really don't believe that, because everything, like I could have a day where I was eating no dairy. Dairy was a big trigger for him. No dairy, and no sugar. Sugar was a big trigger as well. And he would be perfect. There was no itchiness, no redness, nothing. And then over time, I started to realize that if I had a bit of cheese that day, he seemed a bit more like red cheeked. And I thought, is that a coincidence? It's a lot of, trial and error. Or if I had some cake or something, I noticed that he'd be a bit more irritable. And if I did it very over like a week, let's say every single day, it would be much worse by the end of the week. So it took a while for me to realize these triggers. Obviously, I wasn't doing it on purpose. It makes me sound like I'm looking for it, but no, it's just that you don't realize as that early of a mum. I think she was just so tired, especially breastfeeding all through the night. But it was hard to notice when it appeared. Sometimes I found that it was environmental as well. Like I remember him playing in the grass, and he got some like hives on his legs, and I thought, oh no, what's that? Like, really concerned. And then when I spoke to the homeopath, and she said, well, if he's got allergies, then there's sometimes can have grass allergies and things like that. It's quite worrying, I think, because when he was growing like that, it kind of made me think, oh no, is he going to be an allergy baby? Like peanuts and all these things. It really worried me a lot. I thought, oh gosh, how am I going to deal with that if he's already showing signs of dairy and things like that? And then, so it was mainly my diet that I had to really stick to keep it clear. But his was never fully out of control. I remember being on the Facebook group and seeing women posting their children where it was completely covered their faces, and I just used to feel so sad for them, because with him just having it on, it was mainly the backs of his legs, and sometimes on his face. I used to think, gosh, I felt so sorry for him when he'd scratch his legs at night, and I thought, gosh, thank goodness it's only in that area. I did use topical creams, like tallow-based creams, which were great. They're really good at soothing the skin, and that's really all I would say. I don't feel like they can heal the problem, and mainly the research that I've found is the issue is the gut, and it needs good probiotics. And it really wasn't until he started with, like, having food, and I followed this book, which is amazing. It's called Super Nutrition for Babies. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called, but we can always add it on here if people want to know it. And it talks about the gut microbiome and building that back up, and how fermented foods is one of the most amazing things for that. We did try him on powdered probiotics as well. I did see a good improvement with that, because I found with him it was getting rid of it completely was I think the biggest step, because it was reducing, but it was like saying goodbye. And I did find probiotics really helped with that, but I don't think it's a long-term thing. I think maybe just for the first, I don't know, couple of months. And then I started making bone broth, meat stock. So it's very similar. So meat stock is just a meat, muscle meat or meat on the bone that's simmered in water for about 4-5 hours. It's kind of a slower cook. And then whereas bone broth is more slower but lower and longer. So that's more of like an overnight, and that's mainly just bones, whereas the meat stock is with meat. The meat stock I only found out a bit later with him, so he was a bit older when we started on that, but apparently that's a lot more beneficial. Because I think it has a lot more maybe more minerals in because of the meat intake. But apparently that's the best place to start with babies is meat stock. Like just getting them to sip it when it's, when they're showing signs of interest in food. I didn't go down the broccoli and the pureed veg and all of that. I just went straight for bone broth. The meat, I used to get lamb for him and simmer it, kind of like a meat stock really, and simmer it for like 2 hours, and then I blend it and as a paste, and then he'd eat that, and it just did wonders really.
That's such a good idea. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
It's, you know what? It's actually really interesting listening to this because I've never made the connection until now. But basically, my second son was born in May. He had really bad rashes all over his stomach for
Mm.
the first few months. And last month, I started doing basically like a dirty carnivore. So eating lots of like meat, bone broth,
Mhm.
yogurt, bit of cheese here and there,
Mhm.
but majoritively meat.
Mhm.
And it's just clocked to me right now that actually all of that rash is gone from his
Yeah.
stomach that was there
Wow.
before. And I hadn't noticed it until you've just said that. And I was like, wow, actually, yeah. Like that's
Yeah.
happened to him as well, which is crazy.
Yeah. I think it must be something to do with the mineral intake from the bones. Um, but yeah, it's obviously very gentle on the stomach as well, which allows
Mm,
it to heal. I think sometimes when you give the body too much, maybe some like maybe I think they talk about like raw vegetables can kind
yes.
of, make the stomach work harder in digesting it, whereas meat stock is very easy and gentle on the stomach.
Mm,
So it gives it time to heal. Yes, because they do say that most of the time eczema is from a break in the lining of the stomach. I haven't really researched it that deep, but it's something to do with that, and that's where the microbiome is off.
mm,
So yeah, so so we did the bone broth meat stock, and then slowly we worked up to other things. And this is what's amazing about that book is it kind of has um, week or not weeks, month by month, um, like what you should eat. Sorry, like
mhm,
what you should feed them. And so it does say about grain being quite a big trigger for children, because what we don't realize is that um, their stomachs aren't ready for it. And it's something to do with is it the enzyme that you, the enzymes that you get from your molars
mhm,
or your bigger teeth, they get that when they're about 24 months or 20 months. Some children get it early. And that comes with the enzyme that breaks down grain easier, not completely, but easier for them. So if you're giving them bread um, and pasta and things like that, then it's very hard on their stomach, and that's a lot for them to digest. And it can sit in the stomach, and yeah, that just can cause issues like constipation for them, or um, yeah, gut issues in general, because it's just sitting there and it's taken a
mm,
long time. So yeah, they say that it should be soaked grain, so like oats as well. Rice, you should soak it overnight with an acidic medium, because that breaks down the phytic acid, which is like an anti-nutrient.
mhm.
Um, so yeah,
What is an acidic medium?
so cider vinegar or lemon juice, or you can use whey, which is what's separated when you make yogurt.
Mm. Okay, that is really good to know. I do soak my grains, but I didn't know you needed an acidic medium.
Yeah,
So
just a
wow.
teaspoon. Yeah, just a teaspoon. Um, but yeah, with pasta, I don't. Well, you can't really soak that, so I just ruled that out completely. I still don't really eat it now. And with bread, I always went with sourdough, because it had the natural yeast in, which is the sourdough's starter that's in it, that helps you break it down whilst you're eating it, because it's very
Mhm,
enzyme rich, probiotic rich. Um, but another thing that we looked at was the GAPS diet as well. So I feel like because his eczema was never that bad, I never had to be extremely strict with, like, the GAPS diet would be the diet I would highly recommend if you are really struggling with eczema as an adult, or with your child, because the GAPS diet, although it sounds strange, it's very regimented, and in the way that you start. There's an introduction. You start with, I think it is meat stock. It's meat stock and root vegetables only. And mainly I've stuck to that. I don't really use many other vegetables, but root. So you've got like uh, your parsnips. I think they call it in America. Is it rutabagas?
Oh
They say
gosh,
that.
I have no idea.
Yeah, they say that a lot in rutabaga. So I'm thinking, oh. So I used to give him parsnip, and is it swede and things?
Yeah.
Is it swede? You know, like that big one.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
sweet, that's
yeah.
it.
So things like that. Sweet potato. Yeah, it's definitely. If there's a book, it's called. It's something about the GAPS diet. It has other things because they claim. Well, I don't know about the claim, but they say that it helps with ADHD, schizophrenia, like children that are
Wow.
suffering with mental issues too. Yeah. So that's a really interesting book because it's also allergies, severe allergies and eczema is that diet, and people just swear by it.
Wow.
Um, yeah, so you start with meat stock, and then you also spoon the fermented sauerkraut into the meat stock, just the juice to get the tummy ready because it's quite a very, very, like, strong sauerkraut, isn't it? And
Yeah.
especially if you have histamine issues, some people can find that actually worsening if they use, long fermented foods. So when you ferment well, I only ferment cabbage at the moment, which is sauerkraut. If you ferment it for a really long time, the higher the histamine in it. So I can tolerate that, no problem, but people that will have a histamine issue will get hives, itchy skin.
Mm.
Yeah, so if you wanna do it, if you want to do it for people that experience high histamine, is you do a short ferment, so you just do it for, like, 5 days. You just ferment it for 5 days, then eat it, and it'll be a
Wow.
lot better. Yeah. So it's all about that in that book. It's very interesting. It's just yeah, some people will get through that diet within 2 weeks and be better. Some people can do it
Wow.
for a couple of months and be better. People have claimed that they had, extreme gut issues, you know, where, you have what's that thing that people have quite common, like really bad stomach pains when they eat certain things. Is it celiac?
Oh, yeah, or IBS, is it? Oh, celiac, definitely is one of them.
Yes. Maybe like more IBS, 'cause celiac I think is more gluten, isn't it? But still
Yeah,
it
I
probably
think
works,
so.
probably help with them, but, IBS, yeah. There was I think the woman that wrote the book, she did a really good, podcast, and it's on this website. Oh my goodness. Is it the, Western Price Foundation website? They're also very good for sources. If you want to look up things, they have really good articles on there about, like, this kind of low tox living,
Yeah, that's
nutrient dense eating.
fascinating. So with regards to, like, eating well,
Mhm.
um, so do you always avoid all types of, like, bad foods? Like, when you go out to like, do you go out to restaurants and eat, or do you is it very
Well,
strict for you guys?
I think this is where I think, I'm changing a lot now because I think I went through now that my son's better
Mhm.
and he eats everything now. So we got to a point where milk would flare him, cheese would flare him, eggs would flare him, and that what I mean by that is the skin would get red mostly around the neck and the chin. That's like a clear allergy.
Mhm.
Um, and then we did a lot of the gap, like the beginning of gaps. We didn't really have to do much of it. It was just the meat stock and sauerkraut and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And now he can eat everything, no problem, no allergy at all.
Wow,
Yeah, so
that's
he's fine.
amazing.
So now I feel like I'm not very restrictive in that sense anymore. I mean, obviously, I cook from scratch every day, twice a day, breakfast from scratch, and I'll make a big lunch every day, and then we'll eat that for lunch and dinner. Um, but I wouldn't be strict on if we wanted to go and eat out. Like we will go and eat, but I will be funny about where.
Yeah.
So I will look for like a nice, freshly cooked restaurant. Like I don't really want to go and eat somewhere that's not home cooking or fresh cooking.
Mhm.
Um, but I think before that, I did get a little bit apprehensive about eating out because I was worried about what my son could eat. So now I think it's a bit different. I'm a bit
Mm.
more free with that. And I also think, before I wouldn't give him anything processed.
Yep.
And now I'd say I kind of if we go to a party or something, I will just be like, okay, just a little bit of, cake or whatever, because I think he's fine now. And I don't want him to live a life where he doesn't enjoy or experience those things because I don't want him to, I don't know, I guess I don't want that to be an odd thing for him. I don't want it to be restrictive in any way. I don't want him to grow up like, oh, I'm not allowed that. And,
Uh-huh.
so I try to be, as much as I can. But
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
like, and like days, sorry, go on.
oh no, I was just going to say, I think that is key balance, because
Yeah.
like you do see these people who are literally like, my child cannot have plastic toys. Every single toy in
Oh
their toy box
gosh.
must be wooden. Like, my child cannot do this. They cannot wear
Gosh,
anything that's not 100% cotton at any point, at any time, like even for
I
dress up and stuff.
know.
And it's just like, just
Oh
balance
gosh.
it out,
This is
you
it.
know?
I think the key to this low tox living is that it can get too extreme.
Mm.
And I think that these Instagrams and these Facebook groups are amazing for giving you tips and what to do, but then it can go the wrong way, and it's almost too far that you're not enjoying life. And it's like, well, I can't do that because, it's not going to be good for my health. But actually, what's not good for your health is avoiding everything,
Yes,
and
100%.
not having anything. And like you're saying about the toys, I actually remember being pregnant and reading a Facebook about something like that, saying, what do I do? My so and so friend or family member has dropped off all these plastic toys for my child. Should I just go and put them in charity because of the plastic, what is it, the microplastics will get on his skin? And I just thought, you know what, that's really ridiculous. Like, just let him enjoy the toy. Like, what? I just can't. Yeah, I mean, I understand. I just think that microplastics thing is very, like, a big agenda at the moment, and it's, yeah, I get it, but it's too much.
It's
It's
too
like,
much, to the point where
yeah,
you're always worrying about something because you're never going to escape
yeah,
everything, you know?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do think you have to be careful, and I do think anyone that is listening and thinking they want to change stuff in their life, I would just say do small things at a little bit at a time, and don't feel overwhelmed. Don't feel like you've come off this podcast and gone, oh my gosh, I need to change everything in my life, because you don't. You just, I think if you see things and in your home and you think, you know what, I don't want to use, really strong toilet cleaner anymore or something like that. Although that isn't going to hurt you, but I just think more probably, like, I'd say for me, it's fragrance. That's something I can't. I will die on that hill. I can't deal with synthetic
100%.
fragrance, especially, like, when you go and when you wash your hands in, like, a public toilet, and then your hands
It
smell of that.
just smell like chemicals. Oh, it's awful. No, I'm completely with you.
But then I wanna
Yeah,
wash my hands, it's hard. So,
yeah.
but then sometimes you're like, "Well, what's worse?" But, it's just, I just think about small things. I think one of the biggest things, actually, more than toilet cleaner, I don't know why I said that, it's not that important, but, what I'd say is the biggest thing is what you're cooking with. Do not use non-stick Teflon stuff. Like, they
Yep,
still sell it in the shops even after the documentary.
yep.
It's insane. So get yourself a cast iron frying pan or a ceramic frying pan, or
Or stainless
the
steel,
stainless steel. They're not
100%.
that expensive. Just do that. So,
And
and
they're
you know
so
what?
easy to cook with.
They
Sorry, and they
are.
don't stick if you know how to use them.
Exactly. And you know what? I actually had a whole set of non-stick pans. I think it was like a 8-piece set. Barely used because yeah, because who uses 8 pieces, firstly? And I remember discovering this in my journey, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I've been cooking with them." Oh, like, made me feel, horrible. That's one thing I think is something to worry about. And I packaged them all up, and I literally just put them on Facebook, and someone came and got them immediately. And I thought, wow, like, just people don't really read about the non-stick, do
No,
they?
they don't. They really don't.
No, but to be fair, it is what it is, isn't it? Like, I do think some people, they'll live their lives. Like, I think a lot of people will say, "Oh, I know someone that smokes and drinks and cooks with non-stick, or eats um, crappy food and all of that, and they're fine." And I was actually reading about this with homeopathy, and it's really interesting because they talk about it as your genetic inheritance of That's what they call it, genetic and inheritance
Mm.
of your immune system. And some people, and it's all about how the mother was during pregnancy, how they ate, how they lived, emotionally and physically. And yeah, it's mainly about what you give to your child, your immune strength. So some children, they can take antibiotics and all these medications and eat cake and sweets and nothing will touch them, and they're absolutely fine, no
Mhm.
issues. But then there's some children that are a bit more susceptible and will be born with eczema, like my son. So I do think, but then that's when I feel like you have to work on yourself if you are going to have children,
Yeah.
because it's really going to pay off in that sense.
Yeah.
Because although you may be really strong and healthy and you've never had any issues, it's you can even build on that and pass on even better for them.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree with you. It's actually amazing how much what we do. And I guess even after they're born, they follow our example and everything in our lead.
Yeah.
And it goes the same way with when they grow inside us, they're following
Yeah.
everything that we do impacts them.
Mm.
It's crazy. So
Yeah.
it's crazy because like I don't want to go too long, and I've got so many questions. I've just been writing them down. So I'm going
Oh,
to kind of
okay.
pick and choose, and
Yeah.
then I'm going to have you back on because I want to talk about homeopathy, but I feel like that is another
Okay.
subject. I don't know
Yeah.
much about it. And I mentioned it in my first podcast episode. I mentioned it briefly because a woman was talking to me about it. I've got no clue how it
Yeah.
works, but I'd really like to talk about that. But
Okay.
I'm going to save that for next time if you'll
Okay.
come back on.
Yeah.
And I'm going to focus a bit more on food. So I've got a few questions. So, like, what does your weekly shop look like?
So we get all the meat from a local farm. I found this farm. It took me ages because I wanted somebody who had organic principles. So they don't spray the grass that the animals eat from. That's quite a big thing for me, like no pesticides. So the animals are well looked after, they're free roaming, and it's actually a place that you can go and visit. I haven't visited myself, but I speak to the owner, and she's amazing. She's very passionate about organic food or organic rearing and
Mhm.
farming. And what do they call it now? It's what do they call it? It's like a buzzword at the moment. But anyway, it's this everything's grass fed, but it's properly done. So the
Mhm.
animals are moved around. And yeah, so she basically is the middle woman. She
Mhm.
has a collection of farms. I think it's like 3 or 4 farmers that she works with, and uh, yeah, she works with them for them to bring in the meat to her, and she distributes it. So she's like the distributor. Um, she also has chickens. She also grows her own veg on the land. She was interestingly, she's got an award, and it's a really big award, and I can't remember what it's called. When you're a scientist and you win an award.
Oh, hang on a second. It's not. No, I was going to say the
Is it?
Nobel Prize.
I
If
think
that's
it is. Yeah, she's
yeah, I feel like that is
yeah.
a scientist.
So she was telling me she got a Nobel Prize. She was a scientist, a brain scientist, and she found a connection between um, the brain deteriorating and the connection was something about organic produce and like supporting the brain development, and without that the brain deteriorates. Some kind of research paper like that. I
Wow.
really hope I'm getting this right. um but yeah, so she did that, and I think with the money she created the farm. It's called Nature Way Farm.
Wow.
And yeah, so she does that, and she has the chickens and the vegetables. So everything, and you can tell it's all really lovely quality because it's quite expensive. The chicken is quite expensive for me, and I don't always buy it because I think, well, it's a lot. But that's probably why I eat less chicken and more beef because it's a bit cheaper.
Mm.
So yeah, so we buy beef mince from her. We buy oxtail because I love oxtail
Oh,
stew.
I love
This isn't all the
oxtail.
time. I'd say that's only like every few months because it's expensive. Um, we buy like meat chunks. We'll do like stews, things like that. I can also get lamb and lamb mince and stuff like that. So that's from the farm, and we get our eggs from there. So we get because the chickens are pasture raised, so they don't. She's very passionate about soy free, which I love, because when I was looking at the whole eczema thing, soy was a massive trigger for eczema. So that's why I was so adamant that if my son was going to have eggs, I had to get soy free. And it's just amazing. She is about an hour away, so I tend to go to my parents' house and they deliver to there, and then I pick up from there, because they will deliver to me, but it's £15 delivery. So I'm like, I've got to be saving everywhere I can. So I just tie it in with the parent meat. But yeah, so we do that. So we get eggs and meat from her. And I also get my bones from her. So she gives me, I think it's fairly cheap as well, all bones and offcut. So you can get liver from her as well.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, so we get all the like marrow bones and carcasses, which is amazing. I think they're only like £2 or £3 for carcasses. And I just make all the stock with that. So yeah, and then I try and get vegetables from her, but it's not all year round, obviously, and it's not always a lot. But then I'll just go to Waitrose or Tesco for organic, because that's mainly the only where I can get it from. I think Lidl or Aldi do organic as well, but it's quite difficult because they're quite far apart for me. So I either have to go to one or the other, and then I don't always get everything in one shop. So it's quite. And with a toddler with you, it's like, let's just get this in one shop. So I'll pay the extra at Waitrose.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And I always find, I know Waitrose being Waitrose, people say, oh, it's so expensive. I don't actually find it that expensive. I think Tesco is on par with it. But what I find with Waitrose, in my one, is so small. It's fantastic. I can get round it in, half an hour or less. Whereas Tesco, I feel like I'm going round it for like an hour. Or I forgot something that's all the way at the end of the shop. So yeah, so we go there, and I mainly get
kind
organic.
Of veg do you get?
I mainly get, so I cook with a base, really. So mainly I make stews or mince, and with either lamb or beef, and I'll always have a base of onions, leek or celery, and mainly carrots, and then I'll saute that, and then I'll cook the meat, and then I'll put in sometimes I'll put in stock that I have made, and I'll cook it for an hour or something. Or sometimes I'll make it tomatoey and put in tomato, tin tomatoes, something like that. And then just have that with either rice or mash, and that's generally, we're very boring. And then we will spice it up now and then and have chicken. But because as a mum, I don't have much time to make all these extravagant meals with like a breadcrumb chicken with a mushroom sauce, which I would love. I just need to get fuel in me. I need to just, everybody's got to eat well. So having the stew with rice or mash, I just think perfect. Let's just that's your, and then I don't feel so bad if we go somewhere and we have a little bit of naughty sugar or something, like well, obviously it's mainly me, not my son, because I try not to encourage it, because I obviously have a sugar. I'm very big on, I love chocolate brownies and things like that. I try and make it myself, but it's hard. I just don't find the time. So if I go out with friends, it's very easy to say, oh, let's just have a little tea and cake. I don't think that's bad. I think that's
fine.
I
don't think it's bad either. Balanced again, it's good for the spirit, not anything else.
Exactly. So yeah, and that's about it, really. So that's it.
And then your son, what did he eat for breakfast? Because I've seen you do little breakfast shots on your Instagram. So
yes, he's a huge fan of smoked salmon at the moment, which I find mind-blowing.
Like my son, the older one, he loves it.
Yeah, he never used to like it, and I used to think, oh, that's annoying, because it's a good little start to the day. But yeah, so he likes that now and has no reactions, because that's another thing. He used to react to fish. He used to have a really bad
Really?
Yeah. So he either has salmon or sardines in a can, or like a tin, which I would always be a bit like, in a tin, really? But actually, they are wild caught, so they're not from a fish farm, and they're in, I think you can get them in spring water, but I didn't like that, so I get the ones in olive oil, or extra virgin olive oil. and I just debone them. I'm actually going to put a video out soon of everything we eat in a day because I
Ooh,
get a lot of
okay.
requests. And I fry them a little bit so they're warm, and then I give him 1 or 2 fried eggs, and he mainly eats the white, which is so funny. Children, they're just funny like that. He'll randomly eat the yolk one day, and I'm like, oh. And then he'll have sauerkraut with that, and he'll have maybe a little bit of cheese with it. And that's another thing. That's another avenue is raw dairy. Very big on raw dairy, and that's
Yeah.
something I got into through the GAPS diet because was it the GAPS diet or was it the other book? One of them. Because when you pasteurize dairy, and pasteurize is just basically heating it up. They started doing that because there was a time that somebody got very ill from, I'm not really sure what happened, but they just blanket covered and said, you know what, we'll boil this, and therefore there'll be no bugs in it. So I can understand back in the day it probably wasn't the most cleanliest of ways, but we're very different now, aren't we, in the way that we farm. So yeah, always know where you buy it from. I'd say, like, we get it, there's about 20 minutes away is a raw dairy farm, which is amazing, and we get raw milk from her. I'd say if you are intolerant to dairy, I would suggest trying raw dairy because a lot of people actually have a different experience with raw dairy.
Interesting.
And if you're going to start, I would always start with either sheep or goat because it's a lot gentler on the stomach. And that's what I did. That's what I did with my son. So when he showed signs of a dairy allergy, we started him on raw sheep. Or was it raw? Oh, it was raw goats. I remember traveling up to Peterborough to get it. Crazy mum. And yeah, it was a lovely experience though because there was all the goats there. It was a lovely farm. And yeah, we got the raw dairy, and he did really well with that. No reaction really. And then we just moved him on to cows. Because to be honest, the smell is quite strong of goat's milk, and I just didn't love it as much, so we just stuck with the cow. Yeah, and then
With
that's
raw
about
milk. Oh, sorry. I was
yeah.
just gonna say with raw milk, it goes off fairly quickly, right? Like it's got a
No.
4-day shelf life. Oh, tell me.
Well, I was actually reading the other day that someone was saying about how when they leave their milk longer, it like only gets better. But then I don't want to take I mean, this is Instagram. Right, firstly, we should never really be taking factual advice with Instagram. But people in the comments were saying, yeah, and agreeing with them about how it gets better. But I mean, I never really let it sit for long because it just gets drunk quickly. So I tend to buy in bulk and then I just leave it all in the fridge. I used to freeze it, but I actually prefer it fresh. And I've never tasted anything wrong or had any bad experience from, and we probably get through it in like a week or 10 days.
Oh, that's really, really good to know because that's why we
Yeah.
stopped buying raw milk because I was like, oh my gosh, this only got a shelf life of 4 days, we're gonna die, blah blah blah.
Yeah. No, it's like fermenting, isn't it? If you think about it. So yeah, although, fermenting can go wrong in wrong conditions, but obviously just keep it refrigerated. But I guess just test it because different not companies, but different farms might be different. Like for me, I pick it up once it's just been milked. Whereas some people, if you're getting it delivered, maybe it's already a few days old. That's why they might say drink it, within 4 days. But yeah.
Okay, have to look more into that for sure.
But yeah, so that's what all he eats for breakfast, and then he'll have a cup of meat stock with that to start. Sometimes I give him a bit of kefir. Is that how you say it?
Yep.
Kefir yogurt.
Yep.
I do make it, but I tell you what, it's a pain. It's a real pain because it's a lot to keep on top of. I actually sometimes just fridge it for a bit, which you can do, and then you bring it back out and revitalize it. But that would be a really good thing to do if you are dairy intolerant and you want to try it. I would say definitely start with kefir because it's very rich for probiotics.
This is
People
really good.
say that that's actually more beneficial than any probiotic supplement that you'll get.
Wow.
Yeah. Because it's live. When you have a dry little probiotic tablet, there probably is something in there, but by the time it's reached the stomach, it's probably not really going to give you much. So they say, yeah, kefir and sauerkraut, because sauerkraut has lots of goodness in, but mostly what I found amazing about it is whenever I get a cold, or anyone in the house gets a cold, like you can hear it, I say, right,
Mhm.
have a teaspoon of the juice, because I read somewhere that it's got, when you ferment the cabbage, you are boosting its vitamin C by 20 times the amount. That, I just thought, what?
That's
Yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah. I think it's 20 times.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
Mm.
sauerkraut, I mean, you've got videos on your page of how to make it, don't you?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's
it's so easy. It's just salt. That's all you need. So you chop up the cabbage, you weigh it, and then you weigh the salt 2% of what the cabbage is weighed at. So just 2% of the weight of the cabbage, and then you pour it on. You don't even have to massage it if you can't be bothered. Just pour it on, let it sprinkle it through a bit, and then cover it with a towel. Leave it all day. Come back to it, massage it again, and then it will be all juicy, and then you just pour it, like stuff it into a really tight kilner jar.
yeah,
And then if you don't have a weight, you can just use when you chop the cabbage, the core,
yeah,
the end of it, you can just push that on top and leave that as the weight. It always has to be covered in its own liquid, so it will start to have liquid from the salt. So you'll notice that when you're massaging it, it will get really wet, and then you just push it down and the liquid will come over it, and you need to make sure that liquid's over it, because it will go moldy if you do not have that liquid over the cabbage.
and that's it.
That's it, and then you leave it in your cupboard. You can burp it, which is where you just open the jar and shut it again, and it will just like fizz. You just do that every day for 7 days, and then if you want to have a low histamine one, you take it out after 7 days, and then if you want it
Wow.
to be really sour and yummy, which I love, I'd leave it in there for a couple of weeks.
Wow, that is so
Mm.
simple. And this is the thing, it doesn't have to be difficult. And like you said earlier, like I think you go and look at any recipe. And the other day, my father-in-law's here at the minute, and I was looking today, I was like, recipes to make for, whatever. Just wanted
Yeah,
something new. And all these things have blooming like 8 ingredients, and there's like, oh
yeah,
my gosh, this is just completely out of control. I don't have the money
yeah,
to buy all these ingredients for
this is
one
it.
meal,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
this is
Just
it.
give us
Too
something
much.
simple. And even
Yeah,
this sauerkraut, like it's so easy, it's so good for you, and like
yeah.
but people just can't be bothered. You just can't be
I
bothered.
know. But then I don't blame them with the life that we have now. It's like,
Yeah.
like we were saying earlier about, maternity leave, and then you're looking after a child full time. You don't get paid for that. Whereas if you were to put your child in nursery, that nursery teacher's going to get paid to look after your child, and then you have to go back to work, and
And the
it
wages
doesn't
that
make
you make at work will then cover the
cover
nursery.
that. Yeah, so
Pretty
it's just, yeah, it's just, yeah, it doesn't make sense. And then I can't imagine having to work or work part time. And I know I work in the evenings, which is exhausting. But if it was more than that, and then looking after the child, and then cooking and stuff, I can't. Yeah, I wouldn't want to get home from work and start cooking fresh and then doing sauerkraut. It's hard, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a lot. It is. It is
Yeah.
hard. Yeah, it is. And even at like just living in London, like my husband and
Mm.
I are really seriously thinking about moving outside of London just because
Oh, are
it's
you in London?
yeah, so we're in South London.
Oh,
Yeah,
whereabouts?
we're in Croydon.
Oh, okay, yeah. So we used to live in Leighton.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, East London, yeah,
Yeah.
which was
It's just
it was good. When we first moved, it was quite rough, but then slowly all these shops started to appear, and there was like this, there was this corner shop, which was like a real traditional corner shop, and then all of a sudden it started having this organic section. Oh,
oh,
yeah, I like that
fabulous.
about London though, yeah, and then we left, but, yeah, I do think London has its perks. I think they
It
have a lot
definitely
for
does.
children there. Have a lot of play cafes, and the museum, and,
Mhm.
lots of fun things to do
Yeah,
there.
there is so much to do, but it is at a cost, and that is like is expensive.
Mm. Yes,
Just like the
very, yeah.
rent is like out of control. But anyway, that's a story for
Yeah.
another day.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, do you know what? It's been absolutely lovely having you on. Um,
Mhm.
I really do actually want to have you on again to talk about homeopathy if you could.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah.
So we'll have to organize that. But today's been so good, just talking about all this stuff and hearing about your experience. And there's been so much good information here. I've literally taken 3 pages of notes, and I know this I shouldn't be because it's just a conversation, but I'm just like, oh my goodness, I need to
Yeah.
look that up. That's so much, that's good advice. So yeah, thank you
Well, you
so
can
much
always
for
message me if you
don't worry,
missed
I will.
anything.
I will. Oh, well,
Well,
thank you
thank
so
you for
much.
having me on. Thank you for having
Yes.
me. I've enjoyed it.
Hopefully you can be back on again soon.
Yes, I'd love that.
And for anyone listening, you must follow Faye. Her Instagram handle is at Life with the Holmes, spelled like Sherlock Holmes.
Yes.
Yes.
It
Is it Holmes
is.
or Holmes?
Yeah, it's home. I mean, it's not my surname. I always used to say that when I met my husband. How do you say Holmes? Fay
Holmes.
Holmes. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so
Holmes.
like Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah.
And yeah, definitely give her a follow because she's got so much good information and advice and videos and everything like that that you can kind of get, delve deeper into what we've spoken about through looking at the content that she's got on her page. So with that being said, I will speak to you soon, and thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.